Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good noon and Assalamu alaikum to everyone from Pakistan and welcome to 24 Sustainable Development Conference at SDPI. This is your host Zahra Khalid from SDPI. What an exciting and profound panel we have today discussing on the topic of addressing gender-based violence in South Asia during pandemic. It is a pleasure and honor to have such a formidable panel and our listeners and audience all over the world. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed panel comprised of Honorable Federal Ombudsman Kashmala Tariq. She has served as a member of National Assembly and being a very vocal and active member, she tabled more than 25 pieces of legislation in the parliament, especially for improving the plight of women include amendment in hudud laws, amendment in honor killing laws, sexual harassment, women empowerment laws, and formation of National Commission for Human Rights. We have Ms. Nilofar Bakhtiar as the chairperson of National Commission on the Status of Women. She was Federal Minister for Tourism and also remains as a senator. Ms. Nilofar Bakhtiar has worked toward improving women's social status as well as working in areas of health and education. We have Dr. Syed Kaleem Imam, who is a highly esteemed security expert and have served a high-profile appointments both nationally and internationally. He's a regular speaker at various training institutes and public forums with a list of several national and international publications to his name. Moreover, he has been conferred with 3 UN Peace Medals and Tamga Imtiaz. He is currently serving as the Federal Secretary Narcotics Control Division. We have Tahira Abdullah. She is a development researcher, author, practitioner, human rights defender, climate change, environment and peace activist, humanitarian volunteer. We have Ms. Shamim Chowdhury, a freelance foreign correspondent, writer, and who have worked for Al Jazeera, English, TRT World, and many others. She has covered many stories from the Syrian war to the Rohingya refugees crisis as well. We have Dr. Anita as her experience includes as a researcher on WASH, social norms, gender, social protection, adolescents and young people and migration. Her technical expertise are in teaching, designing, implementing, and monitoring academic and policy-focused research programs. She also peer reviews articles for international journals. We have Saman Ali, who is a development professional with education and work experience spanning Pakistan, UK, Canada, as well as Switzerland. She is passionate about gender and youth issues and has worked in this field for most of her career. In 2016, she was part of the official Canadian delegation to the UN Commission on the Status of Women. We have Saima Ali, and her work experience includes for Dutch NGOs for empowerment of women and the support officer in International Criminal Court and Special Tribunal for Lebanon for victims against war and human rights crime. So thank you all. And just for quick information, I just want to inform you that this webinar is subjected to English language. The format of this program is 1 hour and 30 minutes, which is ample time because we want to make a tangible and productive discussion out of our audience. I would humbly request to my panelists that we stay in time constraints. Before initiating this discussion, we have one recorded message from one of our esteemed panelists, Ms. Nilofar Bakhtiar, after which we will directly go to the topic of discussion, and I will request Ms. Saima Ali that after this 2 slides will be presented by her, which will open up the discussion on the most important topic we have today. Thank you. Fahad, can you play the video?
Okay, I play the video, please.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. A very good afternoon to everyone. I'm grateful to SDPI for giving me this opportunity, and I'm extremely sorry that I cannot be present in this very important consultation. But I'm happy to be a part of this, and my greetings to all the participants. As the chair of the NCSW, I would like to reiterate the fact that violence against women is on the rise. There are many major factors which are the reason behind this rise. The escalation after COVID-19 is something that we cannot deny. We have compiled a comprehensive report which tells us as to what happened during those days of COVID-19 when families were locked up in their homes. The men had nothing else to do but to sit and wait. And the best way to take out their frustration was on their wives, their sisters, the language that was used. There were so many other things that happened during those days, and we have captured everything in that report, which we will launch on the 8th of this month during the 16 days of activism. The Minister for Human Rights herself is coming to inaugurate that report. Ladies and gentlemen, our role now, after the devolution, after the 18th Amendment, has become very crucial. We are the only women machinery working at the national level. So, after taking charge only about 3 months ago, I decided to take a quick round of the entire country, including Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Kashmir, to form a comprehensive plan as to how this commission should move in the next 3 years. We are now at the final stage of writing down our strategic plan, and we shall be launching that plan by the end of December. This plan will have the women and their participation in the field of education, health, which we started from the 25th of November. And again, we're going around the country to all the provincial capitals, to all the faraway areas, the remote areas of Sindh, for example, South Punjab. We're going to Quetta, to the earthquake hit areas. We're going to Gilgit-Baltistan. What we want to aim at is that we should reach out to the women who are actually affected by this violence and who are totally unaware of their rights. So the advocacy drive is also on the rise. We have 78 animated films now which talk about various forms of legislations, and these pro-women legislations have been translated into 7 regional languages. This project we have succeeded in doing in collaboration with the Legal Aid Society, and Shamim Chowdhury has produced these films. On the other hand, we picked up 40 media persons from different media houses across Pakistan, and at the moment they are getting trained at IBA. CAG, the Center of Excellence, is training them, and this fellowship will last for 2 weeks. And these media persons from various media houses will then come out and act as the brand ambassadors for National Commission on the Status of Women. We are training them to report through the gender lens. On the 9th of this month, we are coming up with the National Gender Data Portal, and this will be inaugurated by the President of Pakistan himself. We are doing this in collaboration with UN Women. There are many other activities throughout the country. Basically, we formed provincial committees which are working for these 16 days of activism. And these provincial committees are working in collaboration with parliamentarians. I strongly feel, ladies and gentlemen, that unless we have the politically empowered people and the economically empowered women together on one page, we cannot succeed. If we want to defeat this upcoming wave of violence against women,
Saima, can you please show your slides? Please share your screen.
Yes, I'm just going to share. My
Thank
screen.
you, Kashmala, Tariq, for joining us. We are really pleasure and honor for us for having you.
So sorry, there was a panic commotion in the office because sharp at 12 o'clock, something happened to the internet and it collapsed. So we had to come back to home and my team is just fixing it and we are here. My apologies.
Honor. Thank you. Thank you.
So have we started? Hello? Can't hear you. आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Yes, we just started with the video message of Miss Nilofar Bakhtiar. We have introduction of our panelists, and then now we are moving for the introduction of the title just before to start the the session. Of
Sorry,
course,
Zahra, it's not allowed
आवाज नहीं आ रही. कमाल का.
the screen, fortunately. If there is a possibility, you can share it. Can you hear me, Zahra?
We can't hear you properly, Saima. Your connection is weak.
Okay, can you hear me now? I'll change the connection now.
Yes.
I'm unable to share my screen. I have no idea why, but is it possible to share my slides if somebody else does it? I've emailed them.
Fahad, can you see?
Okay, Zahra, please wait. I will be checked.
Saima, even you can like just let us know about your opinions and the suggestions for the title.
I can share the slide right now if that's okay with Fahad.
That's great.
Yeah.
Miss Simon, now you can share the
Good
slide,
afternoon,
please.
everybody. Yes. Okay. No, it's still not letting me do it.
Salman, kindly share the slides. Thank you.
Interesting. I wasn't the only one who went through this.
No, these glitches happen.
That's great.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I think
Thank you to Ms. Nilofar for the video and explaining the measures that the government is taking in the future. I would also like to thank SDPI for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this panel. Gender-based violence is a global crisis, and as UN Women reports that 1 in 3 women experience violence in some form in their life. Similarly, WHO published a report in March this year where comparative data showed that every other woman has experienced violence between the age of 16 to 22 years. The report also showed that 60% of the violence against women was by intimate partners, which included husbands, fathers, brothers, boyfriends, civil partners. 40% was recorded as non-intimate, and that included distant family members, colleagues, friends, and religious members. In a lot of circumstances, gender-based violence gets unnoticed and underreported due to the stigma of society and fear of justice system. Gender-based violence does not affect the victim, but multiple generations to come. UN Women has very aptly termed this as shadow pandemic. I would like to highlight a few points regarding gender-based violence in the region. We all have come across cases of gender-based violence, whether it's in our neighborhood, schools, universities, workplaces, our own household. And if not, then the news is full of brutal murders and violence against women, such as the Noor Muqaddam case. As a society, our acceptance towards domestic violence and lack of measuring tools for psychological issues and coercive behavior in domestic violence is very concerning. At the same time, I believe that as community, we have failed to change the narrative that drives the masculine mind to these extremes, that value of life and sanctity of someone else's body has no value or respect. Moreover, our government, civil society, and media has collectively worked together towards fighting against COVID-19. And I feel this has shown how collectively we can also fight against this shadow pandemic of gender-based violence. Unfortunately, in Pakistan or in the subcontinent region, media has been vastly showing women in entertainment industry as absolute desolate being who is either beaten up or is an extreme toxic person ruining lives around them. All this depiction of women, negative and submissive, aggravates the violence and the acceptance towards it. It certainly normalizes the violence and the submissive role of women in the society. Lastly, I would like to briefly touch upon our topic of violence against the Khwaja community in Pakistan, as GBV is inclusive of all genders. A few months back, there was a protest in Karachi outside the press club against organized group whose sole purpose is to inflict torture, rape, and murder of Khwaja community. There are members of this community who are fighting for their rights in the parliament as well, but there is a huge gap in providing support and security to this community in terms of violence against them. In conclusion, I'd like to say that our society is driven by men, and there is a need for men to come forward and start talking about against gender-based violence. It has to be reinforced, and it's time men start having these discussions and with families, friends, and in their social circles. Similarly, as a community, we need to work together as this shadow pandemic needs as many helping hands as possible. Over to you, Zahra. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saima, for sharing us your opinions about the changing narratives of gender roles and power. So without any further ado, now we would like to hear from Kashmala, Tariq, and I would request Kashmala to reflect the light on the topic on gender-based violence in South Asia, relevant to share her contentions and experience, especially on domestic, social, political, religious.
Okay. Thank you so much, Zahra. It's a pleasure to be amongst you all. And I can see Saman here, Shamim, Meezan, Saima. Hello, everyone. Okay, I'll share my perspective here from where I started, what I've experienced vis-a-vis work, vis-a-vis our personal life. And being women, I won't get into the total academic thing. I would like to share the experiences which we all come across while we are working, while we are implementing the laws, while we are legislating the laws, and what are the impediments which we come across. So, I, being a lawyer, started my journey many, many, many years ago. Now we are old enough, though we've died our hair. But, the journey is pretty long, I would say. And I was a lawyer, and I started working with Zahra. And from there, something which I would say each one of us is blessed with some passion or something which you feel. We all have seen that women have been marginalized all along. And while even practicing, if we ever heard any name, anybody who would support violence against women was Asma Jahangir, which always came in the forefront. So we carry on from there and we see how many movements have been going on, how many women have been coming out along and from where they could seek help, very few arenas where they could go at that time. This I'm talking about late 90s. So then after that, I went for my higher education to learn School of Economics, came back, got into the parliament. Now from the parliament, it was altogether a new journey. That was back in 2002 and Musharraf regime. But, you know, we got to see, we talk about the mindset. Here we talk about violence and one aspect. Let's not forget the second aspect also, which is very important, that even though we had women prime minister also, we had women sitting in the parliament also, we had women sitting at important places also, but we haven't seen women doing anything for women also. The seats for the parliamentarians came during 2002 regime. You know, why I'm saying is that you have to do a collective research, mindfulness, that this is not one thing. There's so many things which get together, and where we aid the men and where we should teach the women also of togetherness, of sisterhood, of standing by each other. When I'm in the harassment arena, you know, when we say that we need witnesses, not very many people come in the forefront to help the other women. So what I'm saying is that when we talk about legislation in the parliament, how many cases have you heard that in the caucus, when we drumbeat that, oh, we've done so much good things and we have the caucuses in the parliaments and in the legislations. Have you ever heard any woman reporting any case in the caucus and the caucus taking stand for a woman across the party line? Anyone? Any experience? I sat in the parliament for 10 years, and haven't you been seeing the talk shows, the loose comments, the mischievous behavior of the parliamentarians at different times, at different places within the parliament, outside the parliament, on the live TV talk shows? Has anybody ever taken any action or reported or taken a suo motu action on that? Oh, that last night this woman was treated very badly, and we must condemn and we must go to the speaker or to the party heads and protest in favor that was very demeaning for a woman. Have you ever seen that? Because I am dealing with workplace harassment also. My area of concern and forte is that women who are out and about, are they protected? So saying, you know, just having, there is something very serious that we all need to think and discuss. When it comes to the practical arena, how many women stand up for each other? How many of these institutions are really practically working, or they're just doing the lip service? These caucuses, these bodies are not made to give donations, to help the women, giving them sewing machines for their livelihood. These are there to empower women, to legislate, to set examples, to be a voice of other women. So we have to formalize this thing and make these bodies effective. Sensitize them across the board that here, when you're sitting on one body, you have to forget about certain things. When it comes to women legislation, you all have to come in front. So now I tabled a few bills in my tenure, which was Hadood bills, all the amendments in Hadood laws, Karokari laws, then talking about National Commission of Human Rights, that was my bill also. We took the best practices from all over the world, and Pakistan didn't have it, so we tabled that. Now, having said that, how good is that you, while these amendments were tabled in the parliament, nobody would come across the board to support those legislations, even though they knew it, that they are women friendly and all the women across the party lines will benefit out of this or will get affected, a positive effect. So we have to sensitize all the women all across. Going to the violence against women, these are the same things. When we teach our women, when we see these attitudes, we discuss the attitudes of the men, that they are violent. Why do we take the violence? Why do we accept the violence? We have to tell these men and these women that you need to learn to say no. You need to learn the challenges which you asked us to share. The biggest challenge for me in my being the ombudsperson, federal ombudsperson of Pakistan is that we have an issue of awareness. One. Two, I feel there is multiplicity of many, we have lots of organizations, we have lots of resources, but we should learn to share the resources. We should come out of those insecurities that if we share our platform with somebody else, we will be diminished. No, it's not like that. You know, we have to change that state of mind of people to come out. So in case of violence, in case of harassment, in case of intimidation, in case of all these things while you're traveling, wherever you're going, cyberbullying, we can share our resources and give a multiplier effect. I would say that this is a bigger challenge, creating awareness where to go. We have organizations working now. Ombudspersons are in provinces also, in federal capital also, and police is working on this. We have Section 504 working as well. We have so many areas now where if they go, they'll get justice and it will be expedited. However, if we see that all the bodies are working on their own, NCSW is working here, Ombudsman is working here, police is working here, why don't we all have a concerted effort so that the message rolls out where the implementer is? So the implementation, when we talk about violence, when we talk about police, we don't deal with the violence, we deal with harassment at workplace. We take up the cases, we deal with them in 2 months. We give justice. If you go and type FOSPA, I would request you all to type FOSPA on your internet and go to our website or our Instagram. You will find the whole procedure self-explanatory, that we file online complaints, we help if somebody calls us, and the procedure is done within 2 months or maximum 3 months. And we have severe punishments, which are major and minor penalties, which includes dismissal from service, removal from service. Now, why in the last 3 years, FOSPA has come up? When I joined, we used to have 5 cases in a month. Now we are having on average, despite COVID. So here, the topic of this seminar is that what was the impact during COVID? Okay, now there was work from home, less work and less complaints, but even then we didn't shut down. We were working, we were going to the office, and even then we had cases coming in. So the inflow, if we used to get 100 cases or 60 cases a month, it came down to 30, 34. Yes, it made an impact because less people were going to the workplaces. But however, it didn't stop. I would say that I take pride in saying that I feel that I've turned this organization around. Now at least people know about it, but it's still not enough. I need your help. I need help of each one of my sister who's sitting here to spread the word so that many other women, they also come and they can get the benefit who are quiet. Now the challenge which you asked is we need to give that voice to those women. The challenge is they don't speak up. They don't have the confidence. They feel that if they go, they have won. They will be frustrated by the system. 2, nobody will hear them. 3, the biggest challenge is log kya kahenge. You know, the concern of these women and these taboos which we have is most of the women who come, they feel intimidated when they enter. When they come to FOSPA, they come with tears, and when they leave with a smile. That's the biggest satisfaction I get. That, you know, somebody who didn't have faith in the whole system, that women can be treated well, women can get justice. So we, you know, when they walk in, and I would like to invite you all to our office, come and see the system, how we are working. And thanks to SDPI for at least giving me this platform that I can share it with you. So the challenges, I would say, are not We all have different challenges. Like you're saying that obviously when women were at home, there was rise of domestic violence. We saw the statistics coming from international media also, not the local. I didn't see that. But however, the NGOs who are working on that, they've been saying that domestic violence has increased. Secondly, I'm talking about my area, my specialization, harassment at workplace, and what we have been doing. So harassment is quite widespread. However, the impediments which we came across are that if the judges who have a mindset which is closed mindset, we try to expand the definition, which means harassment of all kinds, harassment, intimidation, staring, verbal, sexual, touching, that all comes under harassment in international terms also. And our definition is almost the same as in US, UK, UN. It's almost the same. So, but here, even in the courts, Supreme Court, or I would say High Court, every judge who's sitting there has a different mindset. Now, when you talk about what are the challenges, this is another challenge, because somebody who's a mindset that, okay, sexual harassment means only physically touching, whereas it's not. We need to open the scope. So when a president comes from one province, the other province is saying something else. So Aisha Malik gave a good judgment, Justice Jawad Hassan gave a good judgment. From Sindh, we go 2 steps forward and another judgment comes from another province and we go back. So where are we now? So then we go to the Supreme Court and wait that, okay, something better comes up so that this becomes a precedent for all of us to follow, because we have the powers of a high court. So we are still struggling. I would say that every day we are achieving more. I do not see it's a very bleak side, because I think when you're committed to work and you're delivering and your work speaks for you, I do not feel that situation can stay that grave. If we all are committed, like Saman is sitting there and they are very good at taking pledges. So if we all make a pledge here that, okay, we all be each other's strength and share our experiences and platforms and promote each other's work. So I think in the end, it will be much more beneficial for the larger society, the impact which we want on the society. I think we'll be able to get that collectively. So here, the policy which you want to, which you've asked to share and what problems we face, I think the most important thing is, which I've seen in my tenure here, collectiveness. If we work, because we are a poor nation, we are a developing country, and I don't think that every time we need a begging bowl. It's about the strategy we make. And even though like some seminars like this, and every month or fortnightly or something, we can do that. And one more thing, we are also implementing property rights here. Property rights for women. And sometimes when you talk about this domestic violence, it happens because of that. When sisters ask for their share in the property, when wives ask their share in the property. So the women are beaten or violence is being done on them. And we saw even in Peshawar that was on.
Ma'am, we're running a bit short on time.
Okay.
Can you conclude?
So that was the last thing, that we are implementing Women Property Rights Act, which is 2020. And a reason of violence of women is asking for their share in the property also. Thank you so much for bearing with me. And I
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Kashmala. It's so nice of you to put and shedding lights on in the practical arena. You know, the women should do anything for women, and definitely we need sisterhood and standing each other. It's really nice to know about the FOSFA efforts. So without wasting any time, I would now I would like to turn the mic to Tara Abdullah, who's a great vocal voice on social issues that she has to say on gender-based violence during the pandemic in South Asia. Ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by saying good afternoon to all the panelists, and thank you to SDPI for giving me this opportunity to be part of the annual SDC conference. Despite the fact that we are all online and not present physically, most of us used to be regulars at the SDC conference. I'd like to get back to the pandemic, if I may, because I think that is the main focus of this panel. I wrote in September that there are two epidemics happening in Pakistan. The COVID-19 epidemic in Pakistan, and which is the global pandemic, and which happens to be a femicide and rape epidemic in Pakistan. If I had the data, I would have said a South Asian and global femicide and rape and gender-based violence pandemic, because we know this for a fact. The United Nations has published evidence. Lots of the European Union has published it. I could go on, but I have limited time and I hope I remain within 10 minutes. Pakistani research, unfortunately, is not in the public sector, especially after COVID-19 struck in March of 2020. But just to prove what I'm saying, there is an official document called Data Reporting Gaps. And this is from the government of Pakistan and the United Nations together, acknowledging the fact that there are data gaps. However, a few renowned and credible non-government organizations, research institutions, have taken it upon themselves to do some research on women during the pandemic. Almost 2 years, a year and 3/4 has gone by already. And we don't know when it's going to, with Omicron now rearing its ugly head, we don't know when it will end. So as far as gender-based violence against children is concerned, I would refer to Sahil, and Rosen. Both of them are doing excellent work on children. And I have a lot of stuff to show, but this is not the time for show and tell, so I will refrain. How to address and refute and try to decrease violence against women, children, which means girls and boys and transgender intersex individuals, and women and children living with disabilities. It is very definitely, it was covered by the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, by the Aurat Foundation, COVID-19, and the government. I don't know whether, can you see this? Is it straight, or Meezan, is this straight or the other way?
Yes, it's straight. We can see it.
Okay. So there is research done. So when I make my recommendations, I am now doing research-based recommendations. Working from home caused an increase. I noticed that Ms. Tariq told us that there was a decrease in reporting on workplace harassment because we were mostly working from home. Obviously, that's interrelated. But in-person physical violence, mental violence, emotional violence, domestic violence has increased absolutely exponentially. Exponentially. This is absolutely recorded, despite the fact that 67% of Pakistan's 230 million estimated population lives in the rural areas, and rural women do not report, neither do rural children report violence against them. Gender-based violence, especially domestic violence, is not reported. Rape sometimes comes to the forefront, but is generally not reported. Dishonor killings. Please note that I do not use the word honor killings. There is no honor in killing. Dishonor killings are hidden in the rural areas and sometimes come to light in the urban areas. So this is a huge epidemic and pandemic that we're talking about. This has been compounded by the economic recession caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, or because I'm talking about Pakistan, I should say epidemic. Joblessness, both male and female, has increased, especially in urban areas. Rural women and men work mostly in agriculture and related fields. So that, I think, continued to a certain degree without being impacted so much by COVID-19. Unfortunately, not in the urban areas, especially in the non-formal settlements, which we, for those who don't speak Urdu, call Kachi Abadis. These are urban, non-formal, irregular settlements. Please note that I do not use the word slum or squatter settlements. That is denigrative and pejorative language. I do not use such language. Because of this poverty, especially the feminization of poverty, which I have a lot of stuff to show, but I'm sort of trying to resist showing it, and not abiding by the ILO conventions to which Pakistan is a state party with ratification of ILO Convention 100 and 111. We do not abide by it. So poverty has risen exponentially also along. All this is so interlinked that, I mean, I don't have the time to get into the details. I will not do that. Narcotic drug abuse has increased a lot during this pandemic. Where we used to, whoops, what am I doing? As you can see,
we can see it. We can see it.
Technologically challenged, Tahira. Where we used to use the figure of 4.5 million drug addicts in Pakistan, I was informed by no less a person than the gentleman heading the Ministry of Narcotics and Crime Control, that it is now 9.5 million Pakistanis, 9.5 million. And since the vast overwhelming majority are men, gender-based violence is also increasing rapidly. The law and order situation, crime, militancy, extremism, religious extremism, causing violence and lawlessness on the streets, has also exacerbated gender-based violence and violence against women and children and transgenders. I'd like to, with SDPI's permission and goodwill, I would like to talk about the lack of social welfare services, the inadequacy of community policing, silence from our religious political parties, a lot of silence from the non-religious political parties, the lack of services such as medico-legal help, helplines, and last but not least, loopholes in the law and the sexist, misogynist statements coming from our political leadership, which unfortunately coincided with the 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. Statements such as a spiritual advisor to the Prime Minister, Imran Khan, said that COVID-19 is the result of obscenity and vulgarity of dress of Pakistani Muslim women. And as soon as they stop this, the COVID-19 pandemic and epidemic in Pakistan will stop. The Prime Minister stated that women's obscene and immodest dress has caused results in rape because Pakistani men are not robots. They get provoked. This is what we are fighting against, along with fighting against illness and death with the COVID-19 pandemic. My recommendations are, very quickly, as I said, I don't wish to overstep my time, that we must fill in the data gaps. We must do national level, provincial level, district level data collection, accurate, credible, reliable data collection, especially in the rural areas. We must, the state must launch media campaigns in all the main languages of the provinces, especially on the entertainment channels, not just on the news channels, against gender-based violence and interventions such as state or non-government organizations, helplines, and social services, such as the Violence Against Women Center in Multan that was set up in 2016, but which is now under the new government not working, I believe, not working as efficiently and adequately as it needs to be working. We need to train health professionals in responding to gender-based violence, such as what Rosen has produced, a lot of guidelines and leaflets and pamphlets for training the police. We need to train the police in, number one, community policing. Number two, how to respond to calls for help from women who are facing women, children, transgenders, women living with disabilities, everybody who is vulnerable, all the deprived sections of society and communities who are facing increased gender-based violence under COVID-19. We need to bridge the digital divide and the information technology shortcomings that we see, especially coming to the fore during the COVID-19 pandemic, because men have access to the internet, they have the money to buy computers, laptops, and smartphones. Women do not. There's the feminization of poverty is huge in Pakistan. The ratio is 3:1. For every 4 Pakistanis in poverty, 3 of them are women. That is a shocking figure. And this is a government figure. This is not from any non-government organization. We need to create jobs for men and women to address the 67% poverty that Pakistan is currently facing, especially, as I said, the 3:1 feminization of that poverty. So job creation, the BISP, the Asas, the Langar, the Saiban, the Band-Aid treatment will not do it. We need long-term measures to eradicate poverty and to address poverty. We need to take special measures against child sexual abuse, such as those being taken by Rosen and Sahil. That needs to be scaled up by the state and you know, on a much larger level than is currently be doing. We need to address drug abuse. We need to bring women into environment and climate change interventions, which we did not do at COP26 in Glasgow. We need to rectify that. And last but not least, we need to repeal the single national curriculum, which is going to further hatred and misogyny and sexism and gender-based violence. We need to replace that by textbooks of peace, not hatred. This is something that I have written. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
I'm ending now. In 2015, I wrote this. In 2021, I have updated it. And there is no lessening in violence against religious minorities, sectarian minorities, ethnic minorities, women, children, boys and girls, transgender and intersex individuals, and women living with disabilities. So the only way we can do this is now. My generation is over and done with. For the new generation, we need to teach love and respect for everyone, no matter what your gender, your race, your religion, your ethnicity, or whatever. And that will only happen if we get rid of the mala fide intent of the single national curriculum and replace it with the curriculum and textbooks of love and peace and respect and pluralism and diversity and climate change and love for the environment and Mother Earth. There is no planet B. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Tahira, for such a holistic view about the data gaps and the research-based and your for research-based recommendations. Definitely, we need a long way to turn feminization to humanize. So, without any further ado, we have Miss Saman Ahsan, who is working with UN Women, where the information, data, and knowledge converge. So we should love to know on these bases from her experiences when it comes to gender-based violence in South Asia during pandemic. Over to you, Saman.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So first of all, it's a pleasure and an honor for me to be on this very esteemed and distinguished panel. All of the ladies here are such experts, both actively with experience and qualifications, that I'm really humbled to be part of this panel. But I think we've spoken a little bit about violence against women, and just to give a brief overview, we all know that it's a huge issue. And this is not only in Pakistan, but across the world. We know that 1 in 3 women experience violence, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is the women who actually speak up about it. The actual number must be much larger. I think all of us have either experienced violence, different forms of violence ourselves, or know women in our very close circles who have. So there are very few women who are, protected from this kind of violence. What has been seen in other humanitarian crises in the past also was that violence increases in such emergency situations, and other panelists did mention that. This is especially in the lockdown, as it has been mentioned, the risk of intimate partner violence or domestic violence increases significantly. And some data to support this, in Pakistan, there's lack of consistent, reliable data, which Tahira Saiba mentioned, that we really need to work on the data to get it. But from what data we have, there's a study that of police stations in the rural areas of Pakistan, and since 2011, more than 80,000 cases of violence against women were reported. But the highest number, and this is a study that was concluded last year, the highest number was in 2020. So that shows that there was a significant increase in violence against women after the lockdown. Another report by an organization, SSDO, looked at the official statistics of violence and saw that there was a huge increase after the lockdown. So in the first 6 months of 2020, there were around 3,148 cases of violence against women. And in the second half, because by that time the lockdown was fully implemented, there were more than 6,200 cases. So a doubling of cases just in the period of 1 year, looking at the first and the second half. And similarly, domestic violence official statistics show that in the first half, there were 573 cases, and in the second half, there were 849. So another huge increase. And different forms of violence also increase. As I said, domestic violence saw a great increase because people were, captured inside their homes with the men of the family who are in a powerful position, who suddenly became more frustrated and stressed. The women had less access to social and family support and were more vulnerable. So this increased domestic violence. Another form of violence that saw a huge increase was cyber harassment, because a lot of especially young people were more online and with less things to do, less, schools were also mostly closed for a long time, schools and educational institutions. So with the attached frustration and stresses of being in the lockdown situation, cyber harassment also increased a lot. So I think we all over here understand that this is a huge issue. I don't need to speak to the converted. We all know that this is an issue that really needs to be addressed, but I'll speak a bit more about, UN Women's vision of what needs to be done to address the shadow pandemic of gender-based violence, which is accompanying the actual pandemic of COVID-19. So first of all, in a pandemic situation, the services that respond to GBV survivors need to be enhanced, and they need to be treated as essential. Often it happens that the authorities, the government, other partners, they start focusing on emergency relief. But they don't realize that these services are essential and need to be strengthened. What happens is that, for example, shelters, helplines, the justice system, they all become less responsive to GBV because they are focusing on very, what they feel is a top priority. But gender-based violence should also continue to be a top priority, and we need to build their capacity to respond in the situation of a pandemic. So, for example, there should be standard operating procedures for Darul Amans, for prisons, for police stations, and also, for example, the quarantine centers that were set up on how to deal with survivors in, a pandemic. And that is something that UN Women also supported our partners like the NDMA and PDMA do at the start of the pandemic. So another thing that needs to be done is to make these services more innovative. For example, in the lockdown, there is less mobility, there is less access to, reach out to those services. What we found anecdotally was that women were locked in with the perpetrators, and some of them used to hide in a cupboard and call, organizations like NGOs or other people that they could trust because they were unable to speak. So in such a situation, when there's low mobility, helplines need to be functional fully 24/7 so that whenever a survivor has the time, she can reach out to them. There also need to be more innovative tools. For example, UN Women supported the Ministry of Human Rights National Helpline, and we updated it with an app and a panic button. So a woman did not have to speak. If she's in a life-threatening or dangerous situation, she can press the panic button. We also supported them with SMS support because a lot of women don't have smartphones and calls or WhatsApp is difficult. So they could also report through SMS. So that's, stepping up to the digital world and being more responsive to the survivors. Then we also need to consider the women who are in the healthcare service. They need protection, they need support. Often when they're dealing with patients, they are also subject to violence. So we need to make sure that the SOPs include them also. Tahira Saiba mentioned very well that economic opportunities need to be enhanced, but they need to be enhanced for both men and women. Because if women have financial autonomy, or they have a better financial situation, they are able to reduce the risk of violence. They are able to stand up on their feet if they have more sort of respect or authority in the family, and in case they face violence, they are able to stand on their own feet. Then we need to, which has also been raised by Kashmala Saiba and Tahira Saiba, about awareness raising and women's voices. So awareness raising is something that the more you do, it's never going to be enough. We need to raise awareness at all levels with all people, especially men and boys, because we are usually focusing on the women and we tell them about their rights, but we really need to engage the men and the boys and also inform them of women's rights and what role that they can play. And lastly, this is also been mentioned earlier, the coordination among all the different institutions, the departments is essential. Kashmala mentioned that we can't work without coordination. We can't work in silos anymore. This problem is too big. All of us have a role to play. We need to be coordinated and we need to be evidence-based, which Tahira Saiba mentioned again and again. We must have the evidence. And for this, UN Women is developing a national gender data portal, which is going to be launched this week. And we hope that that will be able to provide gender-related data from all across the country. So I think those are some very important initiatives that need to be taken, especially in a pandemic situation, to respond to gender-based violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Saman, for raising the issues on humanitarian crisis, violence, justice system, and definitely coordination is essential to minimize the financial autonomy. And this is really a good news to know about the gender portal is soon being introduced for masses. So now I would give mic to Ms. Shamim Chowdhury. Shamim, someone just mentioned about the humanitarian crisis violence. So being an avid journalist, we would love to know your side of experiences on gender-based violence during pandemic in South Asia when it comes to socio-economic, political, or religious affairs. What are your relevant thoughts and experiences that are worthwhile to know about the Rohingya as you work in the Syrian refugees as well?
Thank you, Zahra, for inviting me onto this wonderful and very important panel discussion. Thank you to the SDPI. Before I talk about my own personal experiences, I do want to make a few points, and that is gender violence is not a gender issue, it's a human rights issue. It's not a man, woman, trans issue, it is a human rights issue. And this is something that I think we need to have at the forefront of our minds when we discuss this subject. The other point that I want to make is that, of course, all the statistics show us, we know that gender violence has, you'll have to forgive me, I've actually got a bit of a cold. We know that gender violence has spiked during the pandemic, but we need to put this into context. During any crises, there's always a spike, there's always a rise in gender violence. So, and the reason why I make this point is because hopefully one day this pandemic will be over, or at least it will be, or at least the virus will be contained long term. But gender violence is not going to disappear. So, of course, the topic of this discussion is the increase in gender-related violence during the pandemic. But I really think we need to not forget that it's not something, there are issues specific to the pandemic, but gender-related violence is not just something that is as a result of the pandemic. So, and I think we need to bear that in mind. The other thing is, and of course, it is the case that the vast majority of gender-related violence is the targets are women, rural women, all of which we have discussed. But let's not forget that men are also victims of gender-related violence. And because the numbers tend to be less, there is less of a focus on them, which I think is problematic. And young boys as well. They are, whether you're a boy or a girl, you're a child, and we need to bear this in mind. So these are some kind of contextual points that I would like to make. Now, in terms of South Asia, and this is the title of this discussion is Gender-Related Violence in South Asia. Now, that is Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. A subcontinent of 2 billion people, a quarter of the world's population, many of them living in very challenging economic circumstances, exacerbated by the pandemic. So we need to bear that in mind as well. Pakistan's, and I am of Bangladeshi origin, and I will go into some of the kind of issues that I have reported on and witnessed in due course. But I do want to remind everyone of something that this is very important because it is South Asia specific, something that Imran Khan, Pakistan's Prime Minister, said in a statement last year when I think quite soon into the pandemic. And he said there are 2 pandemics going on here. There is one in the developing world, and then there is one in the developed, rich nations. In the rich nations, the concern was to protect yourself from the virus, to not get sick, and to take whatever steps are necessary to ensure economic security of the populations of those nations. In South Asia and in Africa and other parts of the world, in the developing world, it was completely different. It became a question of survival. It was literally daily wage earners were lost their main source of income. So really, I mean, the pandemic means very different things to very different people, depending on your socioeconomic circumstances, depending on where you were born. So it's not a generic kind of it's not a generic issue here that where one law, one rule, one circumstance applies to all. And I think this is something that needs to be borne in mind as well. And of course, he was absolutely right, we know. And if I can, a couple of things that spring to mind is in India, Narendra Modi gave 4 hours notice before he imposed a lockdown. 4 hours. And in that time, he told, I think it was something like, I don't know, 2 million people that they had to go back to their villages by midnight. Now, I think we need to think about the implications of that. Many of them couldn't get transport. Many of them had to walk hundreds of miles. Many died along the way. So the lack of management, the lack of implementation on a kind of, a lack of kind of coordination and management on a political level has a trickle-down effect. I'm talking about how people were impacted in their daily lives and in terms of their kind of day-to-day survival. But there is a very intrinsic and direct link between that and the psychological impact that has on people, and thereby domestic violence and gender-related violence. So if we look at that, in Pakistan, there was a serious shortage of PPEs. Doctors took to the streets. They were protesting. They didn't have enough protective gear. You take these elements in isolation and you build up a bigger picture. I don't think we can just look at the issue of gender related violence in a vacuum. We really need to take all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, put them together and see how they're interrelated, because they are interrelated. In Bangladesh, the garments industry, which I have reported on extensively for many years, employs, it constitutes 80% of Bangladesh's exports. It employs 4.5 million people, of which 75% are women. Factories shut down overnight. And the women were told to go home. There was, at a point, there was no knowing when or if the factories would reopen and these women, mainly women, would get their jobs back. I interviewed a lot of them remotely, and also union representatives, and they said they had enough money for 1 month to survive. Economic factors exacerbate violence, gender-related violence as well. And all of these factors need to be addressed in parallel to addressing gender-related issues as well. So I say this because I make the point that we shouldn't look at it in a vacuum. We shouldn't dismiss the fact that boys and men are also victims of gender-related violence. I don't think it's a debate. I think it's too important a debate to be hijacked by one particular group of people who at the expense of other victims as well. You asked about my own personal experiences. Well, I covered the Rohingya refugee crisis from the very beginning. Well, I say the very beginning, I mean, it's been happening since 1992, but I'm referring, of course, to the mass exodus that started in August 2017. I was in the camps. I spent a lot of time in the camps. I was working for a Turkish channel at the time as a foreign correspondent, TRT World, and I accompanied the President's wife, General Recep Tayyip Erdogan's wife. I was part of the media delegation into the camps when Turkey was distributing aid into the camps. And I spoke to many women, and they had been raped in Myanmar. And subsequent to that, it's been widely reported that there has been sex trafficking and child trafficking in the camps themselves. Exacerbated by the pandemic, I spoke to Save the Children during the pandemic, a representative of Save the Children, and they said that for health and safety reasons, they had to narrow down NGOs and humanitarian workers in the camps to a bare skeleton staff, for obvious reasons, to minimize the risk of infections. And when you have a scenario where there's already a culture of sex trafficking of women and children, it stands to reason that the risks of that is going to, the numbers are going to increase and the risks are going to increase when you don't have any kind of supervisory body, policing body present due to the pandemic. So that is certainly an issue there. The other problem with the Rohingyas is that it's actually very difficult to have access to them. At the time of the pandemic, at the start of the exodus back in August 2017, and for several months, well, I would say a good year or so onwards, the media had very good access. We were given visas very, very quickly, and we could be inside the camps within kind of 24 hours, and we could go where we wanted to and speak to whoever we wanted to. The Bangladeshi authorities clamped down on that with time, so it's becoming more difficult to get visas. So it's you know, the very alarming thing is that whatever difficulties women inside the camps are facing, and internet is not allowed. They don't have, none of us know about it, which is really even worse, because at least, you know, for many women who are victims of gender-related violence in other parts of South Asia, at least in theory, in principle, there are channels which they can utilize. For the Rohingya, that is not the case. And we are talking about 1.1 million people there. So these are some of the factors that need to be borne in mind as well. Yes.
Yes. Is it possible to get you back? We have other participants. I want to take her. We are getting like short of time, so.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Because it's already 1 hour and 20 minutes. You know.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I will wrap up. So
yes.
Just very briefly, I'm not really going to go into the proposals because I think Saman Ahsan articulated it very, very well. You know, she has expert knowledge in this field more than I do, so I'm not going to go into that. But I would just reiterate that it is what Nilofar said, that it requires it requires political will, and my feeling is that there is a lack of political will. And the other point that I would like to make is that you know, it's not just about sisterhood, it's also about brotherhood. Many men, I'm heartened to say, are as appalled and principally opposed to gender-related violence as women, and we've seen that time and time again. So we really need. This is not a man versus woman, you know, debate. It's a human rights debate, and we need men to be at the forefront of the cause as well, which they are, and which does give me hope.
Thank you, Shamim. It's really good to know about the definitely, we all know that subcontinent is always very challenging, and there is a question of survival and human rights and generic issue. We need to like put it in the management on political level, and further, you know, on legislative level as well. So now I would turn our mic to Miss Dr. Anita from Nepal. To listen what her contentions are during the pandemic in South Asia, specific to Nepal, being in, you know, South Asian region. So I would really love to know what she thinks and carry about the facts and figures, Anita.
Thank you, Zahra. Thank you, SDPI, for giving me this opportunity, and I'm very delighted, and I feel extremely, very grateful to hear from you all, from a lot of your experience. I'm thinking a lot about my colleagues who could not make it to this panel, but who would have really, I think, contributed in terms of what legislation changes were made and what is the problem in making any legislative changes, as Kashmala has shared in the findings. So I think I'll start with something that Kashmala raised, but it was also then raised by other participants about the structural way in which women are quietened in Nepal, as it seems to be in Pakistan and elsewhere as well. So I'll give you an example. So when my other participant was talking about, I think it was Tahira, talking about how women in politics are, do not speak up for women. So in Nepal, what they did was like, because all the women politicians who understood that men were not doing anything, to that would kind of contribute to women's equal rights. So they made what they called an inter-party forum. So inter-party network. Inter-party network is basically the network of women from many different political parties. So they decided that on the issues of human rights and gender, they would work together. They would go against their own party's ruling, but would work together if it is an issue of gender right. So they did it successfully for a year, but then there was a big contestation on who would be the speaker in our parliament. And because all the women, they wanted a woman to be a speaker, they didn't care for which party the women belonged to. So they all, started like voting for the women, going against the ruling of their party. And what the state did was then it banned the women's inter-party network. So you can see how this is which is a very structural issue. And as Shamim has also raised, and it was also raised by the other respondents, I think as long as men do not see human right violation as a gendered issue, this is not going to be changed. At the personal level and at the local level, these issues will not change, because I mean in all the South Asian countries, even though women hold political positions, these positions are there because they are reserved for women, not because the state or the structure feels that you need to have women's voice equally. So for example, in our case, we are regarded as a very very democratic and a liberal society towards women compared to some South Asian countries. So our women, there are 33% of women in our parliament. But if you look at the inter-party constitution of women, if you look at how many women are in the decision-making position inside the political parties, inside each individual political parties, then it is less than 3% of women. So any agenda that a woman makes is not an agenda of the political party by itself. So, that's why there's no way that if you cannot raise it through your party, there is no kind of, there's no question that you can then influence the state structure, the state mechanism to do anything for women. So all these things about quotas and representation is then, it becomes useless, because inside her own party, the women do not have their voice. So, and when they go against the parties to raise this voice, they are basically like whitened by different ways. So as I think a lot of my friends have said, I think this should be driven by men, because we know that men are powerful in the state, at home, and in the community, in our society. And as long as men do not see gender-based violence as a human rights issue and not a women's issue, this is not going to change. So we need men to come up and come forward to end what is, and agree that this is a human rights issue. As Shamim has said, it is about rights. It's not about gender. It is not about women. And in terms of Nepal, I think, just like in any other cases of crisis or in any other countries in the world, there seems to be a huge rise in GBV during COVID-19. The reasons are almost the same: women being locked up with their own perpetrators at home because there was no mobility. Men who were working elsewhere have returned home, stayed in home for a prolonged period of time with no income to feed the family, and the frustration then goes to the female members of the family, be it a daughter, be it a sister, or be it the wife. And the other thing is also, at least in Nepal, most of the women are employed in informal sectors, which means that they were the first to lose their economic opportunities. They were the first to lose their jobs. So because women were not able to contribute economically to their families, it also contributed to the increase in gender-based violence. For example, we have been doing research on the adolescent girls who have been working in entertainment sector in Nepal, and we found that a lot of girls who stayed together with their boyfriends were unable to earn during this COVID-19 pandemic because the work in the entertainment sector was closed. And these girls have repeatedly faced violence from their partners, because when the sector was not closed, they were the ones who were contributing economically. They were taking care of all the economic needs of their male partners. So, so violence upon them has increased because they were not able to support. In terms of support, the support has been reduced during COVID-19 because firstly, women were not able to go to the police to report because there was a restriction in mobility, and the police posts were also closed in Nepal. So, you know, they only took online cases. And as my friends have already spoken, access to digital technology by women is there's a lot of less access by women. So they didn't know about the online reporting mechanisms. We have helplines and hotlines free, but the information was not there for women. And also because, you know, I mean, they also do not possess phones. So if you know, it doesn't work when you have to complain against your husband to the police using his own phone when you don't have a phone. So you know, it's a very practical issue. So that is why the support was reduced. In other places, we have a very good system, I should say. There is a way in which in Nepal, the formal and the informal sectors are linked. So in informal sector, what happens is in every ward, in every like collection of houses, we have a gender-based violence monitoring committee, and the women in this committee are trained to monitor, but also to link survivors of violence to a formal state mechanisms. And we have a strong formal state mechanism if women can actually get access to it. So, but these gender-based violence monitoring committee partner groups were also, they were affected by the mobility. They could not do their monitoring work. They could not help the women to get access to formal justice centers. And this also meant for the women that they could no longer report report the cases of violence. So that is why the violence, there was no support for women who were trapped in violence. There were some online mental health counseling, and we've spoken to psychosocial counselor who said that they had to increase their services 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because the demand was so much there for psychosocial counseling during pandemic. And again, it links to what I've said earlier. I think because women's collective agency is really powerful, and it can actually topple, you know, political power, and it can topple power when power games in favor of justice. I think the biggest hindrance is from the, you know, at the structural level for us in Nepal, because in the structural level, there is a lot of, how do you call it? There is a lot of tendency to stop women's collective agency and to stop any change that are related to human rights, particularly if it is relevant for women. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll stop here now.
Thank you, Anita.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's good to know about the strong formal mechanism in Nepal, and which is directly linking to informal system. You have point out the very interesting issue, that is structure issue about the voting and the women rights. So I would go directly to the Kashmala, and I would love to know like quickly. Like recently, Overseas Pakistani has passed a bill, Right to Vote Act. So how do you see like women roles in it? Plus, you have listened Tahira Abdullah. She has mentioned some loopholes in the lane. How do you see it? She has referred a couple of textbooks and her own writing experience, and you know. So I would really want to know your technical advice based on your lesson learned to support the key considerations for future program learning and adaptations for gender-based violence, and how to apply a survivor-centered approach to overcome these challenges. And you also mentioned it, like we need to sensitize. So how to?
Thank you, Zahra, and thank you all the participants. I think all the experiences which they shared were very insightful, and we learned a lot, and especially what Dr. Anita just mentioned here. And I would say that if two people, Ms. Tahira Abdullah and Saman, two of them very aptly, I think, made recommendations, because one, Saman works with UN Women, and Tahira Abdullah is an institution in her own self. She has obviously, no, don't say that. We've been seeing you. It's been 20 years, Tahira ji. I've been at least seeing you right on the forefront, standing against all the odds tirelessly. And I would say she's a legend. And what these two women have very precisely recommended, I think you should jot that down. That is the crux of the whole thing, because I'm speaking here as in terms of harassment at workplace. Shamim, as she said, she's mentioned the perspective of a journalist. I would say that, two things which she's given, starting from children rights to women rights to the study of Rosen, and which she was saying, and UN Women, because they've been working with different agencies like police. We are seeing that they're working with them. They're working with different organizations. So different. My point of view was that we need to gather everybody like you did on one table and share the resources so that we spread the awareness message that who has to go where. Like, okay, for harassment, Kashmala is there. Okay, for harassment of children, rape victims, who can help? What is the right organization? Where should they be going? So, like when you mentioned that, Saira Saiba just mentioned that half of the women, most of the women, they do not have smartphones. So how will they apply those apps if they do not have the smartphone? How will they go forward to that? We need to keep that consideration. Then Anita ji also mentioned about her parliament issue, that they all got together, women got together and wanted to select a speaker. And next time their caucus or their women rights committee was absolved. We need to take parliamentarians on board. We need to take men and women, as rightly said, that it's unless we take the men on board, women alone can't do anything. We need, sometimes men get offended, I've seen, by the word of, they think they are feminists. They think that they are just trying to derail the women effort. So we need to take men, starting from the parliament, if we say the trickle down effect, because each of them who are elected members, for instance, they should be using these tools, these institutions for spreading the awareness. We haven't taken them on board. If not to forget, there are around 70 women in the parliament who are on the direct seats. Women seats, and 20, perhaps 20 women who are on the direct seats, direct and indirect. If we take those women on board or those men on board and tell them that spread this message in your constituencies, where to go, what is the prompt action which needs to be taken, where we every other day we see on the media that a child is being raped and then killed. So how to put a stop even after Zainab case, even after making Zainab alert? I think there is a big responsibility of media where PEMRA has to, when we see they're toothless, we need to give them that authority or make them firm that this message can be spread by electronic media, nobody else. Unless, this TV is in every household. When we talk about phones, not everybody has the phone till today. Yes, even if they have the phones, they have those, not the smartphones, the ordinary phones. So if we all say that the impact, if we need to make an impact regarding all the laws, regarding children's rights, women's rights, violence against women, harassment against women, we need to have a concerted effort to have that awareness campaign on electronic media, which is on different channels. I remember, if Tahira Saiba, if you remember, there was this USAID campaign of education back in 2003 or 4, and they all raised the voice on every, I think it was with Geo or somebody, that for 3 months the message was taken across: you need to educate your girl child, you need to educate your girl child. So like that, rather than spending money in different holes. I think if we all try and create awareness on the electronic media, which is television channels, and make a campaign where the rights are told, where to go is told. Most of the people don't know. If you ask anybody, go to any university, or even amongst the lawyers, you ask, in case of harassment, where do you have to go? I can assure you 80% of them won't even know, despite being practicing lawyers. So whatever recommendations, because all of these women are doing beautiful and wonderful work in different directions, they get exposure with different institutions, different learned women who have more experience in their own fields. So I think we need to hold hands, jot down all those recommendations. And my point would again be focus on awareness. Awareness is extremely important. When you talk about the research, yes, these NGOs which Tahira Saiba has mentioned, which Saman Saiba is in touch with all those people, that's a very good data bank for you to know how to move forward, to know what how the government should move ahead. But when you want to create effectiveness and implementation and help those people, I think even with the existing legislation and existing institutions, the most important, the key thing is awareness, where to go, to take, hold their hand and bring them to that institution. Look, when people came to us, they never believed that they can get justice in 2 months. They never believed that they don't have to spend a single penny. So by word of mouth, whoever got justice from us, they spread the word and the women started coming to us. And then we took the refuge of social media, and which is expanding the message. However, if again, I would say, we join hands, we share our resources, we share the platforms. I am more than willing on my website, if somebody wants to put in something for other people to reach out, we can do that, and vice versa. That if in terms of our help, if somebody needs or needs to tell people where harassment is taken care of, we do it at federal level, provincial level. There are different provincial ombudsmen doing a wonderful job. So with that, I would say, and we have to sensitize the parliamentarians. We have to take them on board, because for future legislations, amendments, like it's been 3.5 years, we gave amendments to law ministry. Now, recently, those amendments, I think Ministry of Human Rights put them up, and the bill has just been passed from National Assembly. Still, it's lurching at the Senate level. So what I'm saying is, as soon as I stepped into this office, we made amendments, sent them to Law Ministry, 3.5 years, not taken ahead. Now, there were small amendments like transgenders harassment was not included in our ambit, man or woman. So there was a simple change of one word to add person over there. But how long did it take them to realize that they are also human beings? They also have rights. They also get harassed, and they get more harassed than we do, ordinary person does. So yes, I think, and I hope, like Shamim Saib also said, that, we hope that this pandemic comes to an end, a normal life starts, which whatever way, but we've gotten used to it. But coming to the right forum, going to the police, going to the, look, Saman, when you spoke about that Ministry of Human Rights started an app, Ministry of Human Rights is not the implementer. When I talk about these things, don't confuse the public. Ministry of Human Rights has nothing to do by giving, they cannot give any sort of relief to the public. They says it there, they make the laws, they are, the implementers are different. This is what I say. It can be either police or it can be either us, in terms of harassment, us in terms of sexual violence, police. And even till today, police and we are not even on the same page. I see on social media police doing activities with few people. How many cases have police sent to us? None, zero. Do you think they don't get the cases of harassment? So that is why the coordination is needed. I saw an ad on TV, and European Union had funded that ad. I saw their logo on the side, and it spoke about property rights, that now you all are empowered, that you can have rights in property. And I said, oh wow, there is something new, we must learn about it. And later I found out they were talking about our laws and we didn't even know, and they were publicizing that. So that means that the resources you are putting in, you are then misguiding the public. And it is huge amount which is spent on media. You got to understand, here it's a matter of the country. It is a matter of well-being of millions of women. So integrated effort is required.
Sorry, ma'am, I hate to interrupt, but we will ask to close our session in a timely manner because IT needs to prepare for the next session. Sorry, my bad. My apologies.
Happy. Thank you so much, everyone. These were my humble suggestions here because I see women who spend their whole lives in this field. Thank you all. Good luck to you all. And we are always there, whatever. If you feel that you in actual life need to come and sit, we can offer our office there and our resources to share for getting all these wonderful women across to have a talk in person and live, and FOSPA is there to host it anytime. And if SDPI want to facilitate that, we'll welcome that. Thank you so much with all your wonderful work. May Allah bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kashmala, for your time and inviting us. Definitely, we are visiting you soon because this is such a short time, very short time, and every time it happens. And next time I'm coming with more, 3 or 4 hours. Thank you so much. Yes, Miss Tahira. So as Kashmala mentioned, that we have to spread awareness through electronic media. So what do you think? How to apply international gender lens to implement this in this hostile and patriarchal society? So I just need your,
very brief. You want a very brief answer?
Yes.
Frankly speaking, and with due respect to UN Women and everybody else, I, after 42 years in the field as an activist, I feel that we must not apply an international lens in Pakistan. I cannot speak for Bangladesh, Nepal, India, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, but I can speak for Pakistan. The moment we start mentioning international laws, rules, conventions, whatever, I mentioned convention, the ILO convention here, because this is, like a different kind of an audience, a different kind of panel, as you said, as someone said, speaking to the converted. I feel that we need to remain indigenous. We need to remain national and provincial and district level, even down to union council level. Dr. Anita mentioned ward level. I feel that we must bring our own answers, bring our own solutions, and everything must emanate from within the country. Otherwise, it will be rebutted, refuted, castigated, especially by the religious right, the extremists who are now on the ascendancy. Right now, they are ascending. We must not fall into that trap. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Saman, you have just 30 seconds for conclude your remarks.
Excuse me, before that, we have a question from Mr. Usman Ahmed. Zahra, can you address the question, please?
Sure.
Can you see the question?
Oh, yes, it's for, yes. What is the status on domestic violence bill as of now? We are interested in partnering with FOSPA to generate dialogue around in order to pass the bill soon. This, yeah. Kashmala, do you have any answer for this? For a minute, I think it's kind of question. Well, he wants to know about the status of a domestic violence bill.
It has not been passed yet. And I think it's very, very important. And we all, as I said, concerted efforts to lobby it. I think Tahira Saiba can reply on the exact situation vis-a-vis Parliament and the status of the bill. But I think it needs to be pushed. And as I said, FOSPA is always there. You want to have a round table, you want to have a discussion. We are more than willing to offer our conference room, our office, and facilitate that. Tahira Saiba, you take the lead in that.
Domestic violence bills have been passed in 3 of the 4 provinces. Okay. Punjab, starting with Punjab, going to Sindh, and recently in Balochistan. The Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province has faced problems because the assembly sent it to the Council of Islamic Ideology. It came back in a watered down form. We won't get into the details of that. It has been passed in a very, very watered down form, diluted form. We reject it. And in the federal parliament, in the National Assembly and the Senate, there is no domestic violence bill passed in the last 25 years since we drafted it. 25 years.
One more thing, that this Property Act, which came into being in 2020, it has been replicated by KP government and Punjab, but Sindh and Balochistan are still deprived of property rights for women.
Okay. True. Saman?
30 seconds, Saman.
I don't think I even need 30 seconds because everyone has, given such insightful remarks that I'd just like to appreciate everyone. And I'm sure that together, if we all join hands and, work towards a country, for us, it's Pakistan, and globally also a world that is free from violence. I think we can do it if we all join hands.
Together we can.
So much.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Shamim?
Yeah, I can only reiterate everything that I've heard so far from I have to say, a hugely inspirational group of women. So yeah, I concur with everything that, we all need to join together. And the only other thing that I will add to that is, there are, despite the patriarchal societies and all that comes with, all that implies that we come from, I am constantly heartened by the number of men, and I know I've made this point above, I just want to reiterate it, who support women's causes and who are vocal about women's causes and who stand up against gender-related violence and domestic violence and violence against women. And we need them on board. We need them on our side. Many of them are already on our side. And, I just think, let's not fall into this man versus woman battle. It's not. It's a human rights battle. And all the good men out there who are supporting us, we need them to keep speaking out vocally and to continue to support us, because I think this is which will hopefully will make a big difference. But other than that, I concur with everything that everyone has said.
Thank you, Shamim. Definitely, it's a woman and men issue both. And Meezan, do you have any words to say to conclude?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Shamim, Saman, Kashmala, Tariq, Tahira, Abdullah, Anita, SDPI. From SDPI's end, I would just like to thank you all for being part of, Anita, for being part of this panel. I would just like to conclude quickly. There was something that I was going to say at the end, but I like to say it at the beginning. There's something that's been started at international, in Europe and in France. There's this hand signal that you do if you're domestically abused. Perhaps that's something we could start in South Asia. That's for people, women who don't have phones, who don't have access to television or media, but they've somehow found out that they can do a hand sign. So if they're in a car with their abusers and they're doing their hand sign, a passerby can see the hand sign and report the license plate to the police. And many women in France and Europe have been able to, been gotten out of their domestic abuse situation like that. So not wanting to ape the West or anything, but this is just something good that has been adopted there, which I think that possibly we can also replicate. So obviously you've said everything that I wanted to say because you guys are all so brilliant, but just something that I feel that the laws are there, the laws are all there, as Tahira Auntie pointed out, as Kashmala pointed out, we have great laws, but I feel sadly that the implementation is where we're missing, at least in Pakistan and in South Asia. It's when it comes to implementation, when it comes to the police or the lawmakers actually being sensitized to gender-based violence issues, we're a bit lacking in that. That's what I feel we need to put in a bit of effort. So we need to train the law enforcement agencies. We need to change the narrative for the younger generation, because the older generation, I feel, already has this mindset, which is very hard to change. So for the younger generation, we need to change the narrative of toxicity in dramas and talk shows, which you already talked about. Cyberbullying is doing really well. Maybe rape and abuse can also be done in the same way. And I had something to share with you guys, so hopefully my
thank you, Meezan. I think so we would probably not share We would not
Okay. So Alexandro Alexandro Pomabo, as you said, Colombo has made faces of Kate Middleton and Angela Merkel and Michelle Obama. He's done them all bruised in black and in blue, and basically he's shown celebrities and high-profile figures being abused just to show how it is for them to be abused, so that people can relate to domestic abuse. So just as Kashmala, Tariq was saying, and everybody was saying, if you can show high-power figures being abused, then people can also relate to yourself or a normal person being abused. As Kashmala was saying, we need to involve the high political power figures, and then you can raise awareness, and you can have helplines, and you can have activism, because everybody from the top to the rural areas, as Tahira Abdullah was saying, the rural areas are always skipped out, and they're, as she said, 67 or 70%. So we need to involve everybody from top to bottom. It has to be a collective effort, and thank you all for being part of this panel and being part of that collective effort. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you so much, Meezan. On behalf of everyone here today, thank you. I just concluded that human behavior is the only possible way to recover and build back better. So, and we thank you for what you do for others in the community. Once again, on behalf of SDPI, thank you very much. See you soon, all. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I think we need a picture. We have a picture. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, once again.